Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is author Andrea J. Stein. We're going to be talking to her about herself and her book, Dear Eliza, a novel. Andrea, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Thanks so much, Paul. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you here as well. Now, before we get to talking to Andrea about herself and her book, as those familiar with the show are well aware, we'd like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched lately. Did we like it? Do we not like it? Do we want to just never have anything to do with it ever again? I'll go first just to give Andrea a little time to gather her thoughts. Not as much on the watching front or the reading front for that matter, but we did manage to watch, I think because it's usually on Netflix, but for some reason it popped up on YouTube. So we watched the Christmas and the New Year's episodes of the most recent version of the Great British Baking Show, because we always like watching that, and they were fun because one involved people from a TV show, and the other one had winners from past shows, and they were always entertaining, and it's just a lot of fun watching the baking, and you always think, could I make that? Oh gosh, no, I have no idea how to make that. And so but it's still fun to watch. And everybody's just so wonderfully and picturesquely British. So it's just a lot of fun. And that's pretty much it from this end. So I'm going to toss it over to Andrea for her anything on her reading or watching fronts.
Sure, I love the Great British Baking Show. I love a reality show where the contestants support each other
Mm.
rather than
It's
try and
so
stab each
different.
other in the back. Yes, exactly. So on the watching front, the two things I've watched recently, I just got through the entire uh, eight or so seasons of Law and Order UK, which I didn't know
Wow.
existed.
Wow.
I'm a huge Law and Order aficionado, and it was
Okay.
really fascinating to me as a writer and storyteller to see it was a lot of the same stories that I already knew from Law and Order New York
Okay.
redone for the UK, and sort of how that felt different when the characters were a little different or things needed to be adjusted for setting. So that was really fascinating. And then the other thing I watched recently was the Netflix mini series, I guess you would call it, of His and Hers, the adaptation of the Alice Feeney book, which I read about 5 years ago. And it's always interesting to me to wonder why things get adapted, purchased, adapted, and then they change absolutely everything about the original book. So
Sure.
that was kind of weird. And then reading wise, I was just listening to an earlier episode of your podcast where one of your guests mentioned the book The Giver by
Mhm.
Lois Lowry, and I happen to have just read it. It's
Hmm.
I guess YA, an old book from the maybe the 80s, kind of an early
Hmm.
dystopian um, uh, story about a society in which it's all about sameness. There is no color, there are no choices, and it's all very calm and pleasant. But it turns out, of course, there are memories of what it used to be, and someone starts to wonder if maybe this is really the right way for them to live. And then the other book I wanted to mention, just because it was my favorite book of 2025, uh,
Wow.
called Fun for the Whole Family, written by Jennifer E. Smith. And it's a wonderful family story about four adult siblings and just where they find themselves in life. They had all been very close. They haven't been for a few years. And one of them basically summons the other three to come meet her in North Dakota. And it turns out she has three secrets she needs to share with them.
Oh
And
my.
it's just beautifully written. The characters are all so rich, and it is the kind of thing I aspire to write someday.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's great stuff. But I do want to circle back to Law and Order UK just because I
Okay.
haven't watched the show in gosh knows how long, but I'm familiar with, the American version. I'm very intrigued to know how does the UK version differ? I mean, obviously locations and also I know the legal system's a little different there and how trials go. But I mean, you mentioned that they took some, I guess, storylines from the New York version and I just transplanted it to the UK or to London,
Yes.
I guess.
Yes, yes. Sometimes they are almost identical. Other times they change them up a little bit. And I think some of the changes are because of differences in, say, child protective services,
Okay.
how those processes work. From a storytelling perspective, I feel like the UK version feels much more like a drama where you're getting a lot more invested in the lives of the police officers and
Okay.
the the feelings that the Crown prosecutors, that's what they are in the UK, the Crown prosecutors, that the personal challenges they're facing or their sense of frustration when a case isn't going the way
Hmm.
so it's less about the law and a little bit more about the people.
Okay,
Um,
I was gonna say I always think of, with Law and Order, the New York ones, someone finds a body or a crime is committed, and that leads the investigators to, you know, I don't know, witness one, and that leads them to witness two, and then all of a sudden that circles back either back to witness one or explodes everything into this big conspiracy type of thing. That's what I always think of, that there was always like slow steps to get to the halfway point. Okay, now we can shift over to the legal
shift over.
aspect.
Yes, yes, exactly. So it's similar setup, but
Okay.
it feels a little different. You should check it out.
Where I was going to say, is that streaming anywhere? Is it like BBC
Um,
America?
I think I was watching it on BritBox, which
BritBox.
is
Okay,
the streaming of all these. I love British mysteries, especially
sure.
Death in Paradise, and that's my all-time favorite. So,
Okay, I was going to say last week, my wife my wife is very good at solving the mystery like 5 minutes in. I'm totally oblivious, but she loves like a good Agatha Christie or
mhm.
things of that nature. And we watched. I mentioned it last week. We watched Seven Dials on Netflix, and she said it wasn't anything like the book, and also this one they drew everything out. There was no reason for this to be 3 episodes. It could have easily been like one movie or maybe
Yeah,
two condensed episodes. But if you like if you need that Agatha Christie fix, you might as
I
well
will
check it.
definitely check that out. I will
Sure,
definitely
sure.
check that out.
All
My
right.
husband is a big Hercule Poirot fan.
Yeah, my wife likes him too. Okay, so we were talking to Andrea Stein about her book, Dear Eliza. So I'm going to read the about the author page in the way back. Andrea J. Stein is the award-winning author of Typecast and a lifetime lover of books. Born in Brooklyn, she was raised in New Jersey before attending a small, quirky liberal arts college and a large preppy university, both in New York State. A book publicist by profession, she lives with her husband and sons in suburban New Jersey. Andrea spends an inordinate amount of time taking pretty photos of books. Things that make her happy include strong tea, turtles, sunshine, sheep, and the ocean. For more information, go to AndreaJStein.com. Follow her on Instagram at books.turning.brains underscore AJ Stein. We'll give all these labels again at the end of the show. But okay, so Andrea, before we get to talking about Dear Eliza, I want to talk to a little bit about you and your background as a writer. I always like to ask guests, were you always a writer? Were you a voracious reader as a child? Is writing something you came into a little bit later in life? I mean, how did you go from being just Andrea J. Stein to Andrea J. Stein, comma, author?
So I have, yes, always been a voracious reader. I can't remember a time I did not have a book in my hand. I was the kid who would walk down the street carrying a book and reading as I walked and, had the book propped up behind the cereal bowl. And I actually kept lists of all the books that I read, and
Oh.
I still have them somewhere. And I still fondly remember some of my favorite childhood authors. And I started writing stories pretty much when I could start to write. I actually recently, fairly recently, I lost my mom a few years ago and I had to clear out her house. And I found a play that I wrote in first or second grade
Oh, wow.
called The Queen Who Broke Her Leg. And it was an epic story that took place over the course of 8 years, during which this poor queen had her leg in a cast the entire eight
Oh
years.
my.
So there's something to be said for writing what you know, because clearly I did not know that wasn't
I
normal.
was going to say, did somebody have a broken leg in your family that would
No,
inspire
I
it?
don't
Or
know where that came from,
okay.
but I wrote my first complete novel when I was in high school, actually. It's in a drawer somewhere. I'd be a little afraid to look at it.
Hmm.
And then I wrote a second full novel in my late 20s, which is also not a book that's out in the world.
Okay.
And then Typecast, which was my first published novel, was technically the third one that I wrote. And
Would you say that as you kind of, I guess it's almost like self-taught in writing, did you get a lot of feedback, I guess, like especially high school or your younger years, like from teachers or maybe friends or even like asking your parents to give you feedback? I mean, and also I have to, it was that whole that whole scenario of like, really bad teenage poetry, like I'm not letting this see the light of day type of thing.
I did share what I wrote in high school. Well, the novel I wrote was actually part of an independent study. So I had a
Mm,
teacher guiding me through that, and my parents read it and a couple of friends. Interestingly, as far as your not letting it see the light of day, when I went to college, I thought I was going to major in creative writing. And when I got to school, you mentioned my quirky liberal arts college. It's a very creative place, and I wrote younger versions of what I write now. So they
mm,
were character-driven stories, very much at that time about first love, friendship, and I looked around at the other creatives at my college and had the impression they wrote weird, disturbing, creepy things,
mm.
and there was no way I could read my sweet little stories or share them. So
Sure.
I literally never took a creative writing course in college,
Oh,
um,
wow.
which makes me very sad in retrospect that I didn't have the sense of self where I could just say, look, this is who I am, this is what I do. So I was largely self-taught.
Hmm.
And then about 7 or 8 years ago, I started to take some classes through um, a local organization called the Writer's Circle. And it's a workshop-driven course where other novelists and we share our writing and get feedback. So that has been really helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say, you really can't go wrong with a solid writing group, especially when the skill and craft level of everybody involved is about equal, and maybe some
Yeah.
people are slightly better than you, because it's great to get compliments from people who have not written as much as you, but it's not as helpful as you probably need it to be. I mean, I always like to say I enjoy praise, but I need criticism.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely have found that group to be um, so much more helpful than I love my friends who say, "Oh, this is so amazing." But sometimes I know it needs something different or something, and I'm not putting my finger on it. And having another writer who understands craft,
Sure.
who can give that kind of insight and direction is very, very helpful.
Okay, well that's great. Let's talk a little bit about Dear Eliza, a novel. I always like to ask the guest, in screenwriting, we call it the elevator pitch, or I guess for novels, it would be the cocktail party pitch. I mean, someone says, Andrea, I hear you wrote a book. Tell me what's it about?
So, Dear Eliza is about a young woman, 26-year-old Eliza, who lost her mom when she was a teenager. And it's taken her a while to sort of get her head on straight. It was obviously very rough on her. And she now does have a great job. She has an apartment in Manhattan. She has an easy on the eyes boyfriend who isn't very serious, but that's what she wants. And when the book opens, however, she has now sadly lost her father. And after the Shiva, I assume folks listening, Shiva being the morning ritual
Hmm.
in Judaism. After the Shiva, her aunt, her mom's sister, gives her a letter that her mom had written to her before she died, with instructions to be given to her only upon her father's death. And that letter contains a secret that turns everything Eliza thought she knew about her family on its head.
I was going to say it even has the tagline on the book. It's one short letter, one big family secret, right there on the
Yes,
cover.
right there
Uh,
on the
so,
cover.
so I have to ask, so what was the inspiration for the story? But I also wanted to bring this up. This was kind of like the most important thing I wanted to ask you is that before we get to talking about the story, I want to address what's a very important detail is that you have it in the back of the book that you started writing, Dear Eliza, when your mother was still alive.
Mhm.
But then she passed away, and it sounds like there was a pause in your writing, and then you kind of got back into it after she passed. So, how much of that did that impact the story, but also impact your writing it?
I think that it definitely impacted the writing of the story and a little bit the feel of it. Eliza's experience of grief. I had lost my dad many years earlier,
Hmm.
but it was much less fresh in my mind. And I think Eliza's sense of loss and what she's going through in the immediate loss of her father, and then also how that is now bringing up things for her in having lost her mom 10 years earlier, was very much influenced by what I was feeling and going through. And It's interesting because I didn't think about it as a book about grief.
Hmm.
And I still don't exactly think about it that way because I don't think of it as a sad book. She maintains her humor and her in her outlook on life.
Hmm.
But several people were commenting to me afterward, it's a book about grief. And I said this to my husband. That's so odd. I don't think of it as a book about grief. And he's like, Are you nuts? Of course it's a book about grief. And I've been very moved in reviews, author reviews. I'm an author who reads the reviews on Amazon, and
Oh, wow.
I've been really touched by the people who have said that they had lost a parent or lost someone close to them, and they felt seen by the way Eliza is going through her grief, or some of the things that I say about her sense of loss and how it may ease up over time, but it never completely goes away,
Right.
and some of the challenges that Eliza has connecting with others. I mean, I definitely found in both of my experiences of loss that people that I thought would be there for me weren't necessarily there for me, and
Hmm.
people that I wouldn't have expected um, to know the right thing to say actually did. And that's something that I developed in Dear Eliza that I think wouldn't have happened had I not just freshly gone through the loss of my mom,
Sure.
um, with Eliza's relationship with her best friend Mo, who has
Hmm.
always been her go-to and who has always helped her through, especially through humor. And in this instance, Eliza is realizing this isn't, she isn't feeling seen and she isn't
Mm.
feeling like this is what she needs in that moment. And that's an issue that comes up between the two of them. And
Okay.
I think so,
Okay. Go ahead.
just the experience a lot of people have with
Sure.
who's there for them.
Okay. I did want to ask, so when you started writing it, was the story more or less the same? And then after your mother's death, did that have like ramifications on the story? Did you think, okay, I can change this around, or was it this is what I want it to be from the outset?
The story was basically what it was from the outset, although there were the small changes and pieces that I wanted to put in, like I said, with the relationship she has with her friend. And I think I delved a little bit more deeply in some of her inner monologue, inner dialogue about her feelings. And I think the feel of the book would have been different had I not gone freshly through the loss.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I was going to say that I could definitely relate to this because just over a year ago, lost my father, and then about 8 months ago, my mother. So,
Oh my goodness.
so I could really relate to the whole thing of she's relying on memories to like for her experience, her perspective about her parents. And also I love that it was a rocky relationship with her father, especially after her mother died. And it's kind of that you can't, capture that again. All you have are what you experience yourself. You can never get their perspective or their
Mhm.
opinion about things. So I know there's a lot of instances of the book where Liza's like, I really wish I could talk to her about this right now, but she's the source of the problem. So it's kind of this
Yes.
vicious circle that I can't get out of. Um, But what I really wanted to ask is that so Liza, she's really the heart of the story, and she's the one who drives things forward. So did you have an idea in mind when you started that that was how it was going to be, or was it kind of just the storylines developed as you were working on it? So you knew that Eliza was going to be like, she's going to be the one driving the action, and she's going to be reacting to things, and that's going to have results in all kinds of directions, type of sort of thing.
I definitely knew she was going to be driving the action, but I am more of a pantser than a plotter.
Okay, okay.
And so I had sort of some basic points that I knew I was going to hit, but exactly how I was going to get there, I wasn't sure. And some of the other characters, like the character whose existence is introduced by the letter. I don't want to
Sure,
give
sure.
spoilers, but I it took me a long time to get a handle on what he was going to be like, where he was going
Mm,
to be in his life, whether he was going to be married or not, whether he was going to have children or not, and even just what his personality was going to be. And was he going to be happy to meet Eliza, or was he going to be appalled? And a lot of that was decisions that I came to as I wrote and as I took long walks and pondered and
sure, sure.
figured that out as I go.
Okay, I was also going to say that you said you're a pantser, which I am totally not. I have to outline like crazy before I can start on pages. Were you ever working on it? I mean, even though you don't really plot that much ahead, did you ever kind of like let's see where the character takes me today? Like what's I don't know what Eliza's going to do. I don't know what her brother is going to do. I don't know what the stepmom is going to do. Well,
Yes.
stepmom's a little more easy to see.
Yes.
But did you ever kind of like think, okay, I'm not going to be the one driving this car right now.
I definitely have those moments. There is a point in the book where Eliza goes for a drink with her sister-in-law.
Mm,
And it was a scene that came up because I was thinking, I'm not quite sure what happens next. And all right, why don't I put the two of them in a room and see what happens? And so I was not necessarily expecting or planning her sister-in-law to tell her that, she wanted her to not involve her husband, Eliza's brother,
right, right.
as much in her problems, which is kind of a rough thing to take when you're a sister grieving. And I could sort of see it from both perspectives because her
Hmm.
sister-in-law is trying to protect her husband, who's also grieving. But, you know, it's a little bit getting in between a sister-brother relationship is challenging. So
Yeah.
I had not planned that, but I thought it worked and it gave an extra layer of conflict. So I kept it. It stayed.
Okay, that's great. That's great. We'll get to conflict in just a minute, but one thing also, while I was reading it, so despite I guess what you would call the serious nature of the story, uh, at times it almost felt very rom-commy.
Mm.
That almost not wacky hijinks ensue type, but kind of like, oh, what an amazing coincidence! This this happened to this, and single girl in the big city type of thing. So I don't want to say was that intentional, but was that the kind of story that you set out to write, or is that what it sort of developed into as you were writing it?
I always knew there was going to be the romance element of the story.
Okay.
Um, as a reader, I gravitate toward, I guess, what you would call women's fiction. I like reading about character-driven stories. There's often family drama, but I also love when there's a touch of romance in there. I don't read a lot of romance novels because they often don't keep my interest as much. Like I want there
Yeah.
to be more than just the relationship between the couple. But there is a part of me that loves okay, will they, won't they kiss?
No. I
And
was gonna say you're not like the bodice ripper type of thing.
no, no, I'm not. I respect it,
Okay.
as I respect all craft, but so I did always know that there was going to be that dimension to the story.
Hmm.
Um, But again, as the details of it, some of that I figured out as I went along.
Okay. Before I get to the question about conflict, I wanted to kind of circle back that you talk about this one character who is a key figure in this story. I'm not going to go into any detail. We're not doing any spoilers. Uh, this character to me was so unpredictable. I had no idea what to expect. It's like you said, is he going to be happy about meeting her? Is he going to be standoffish? And at times it was like he just kept going back and forth, that you could see the turmoil that was going on in his conscience. Kind of like, do I want anything to do with this woman? Do I want to just, okay, nice to meet you, bye, and that's it. I was he the hardest to figure out because it sounds like from my perspective, it seems like he really was because everybody else is very established as a character. There's really nothing surprising, but this
Yeah.
character could not get a beat on him at all.
That I definitely did have the hardest time figuring him out. And I think part of the reason he reads the way he does is also because of how he and Eliza reflect off of each other. There is a moment in the story when he is sort of indicating to her that he's not sure what he wants from the relationship. And I don't think his intention in that meeting was to say, okay, I'm done with you.
Mhm.
But because of her own insecurities, the fact that she had just lost both her parents, she's gone through her life in fear of losing, of attaching to people and then losing them.
Mhm.
That him expressing this doubt immediately has her saying, okay, then I'm out, which wasn't necessarily what he wanted. And I think that's the other thing about it that's so interesting to me about people in real life and on the page, that they are who they are, but none of us exist in a vacuum.
Right.
We also are interacting with others, and that influences how we engage, how we appear to
Hmm.
the rest of the world. And so I thought that was an interesting moment, where he went into this meeting thinking probably, well, let's take it slow, and nope, she's done.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just great to see him in action, but also just the interaction between the two of them. It was always this, I have no idea what's going to happen because you think we might go this way, but all of a sudden, hard turn to the other direction. It just
Yeah.
really it keeps the reader on their toes because you're like, oh my gosh, now I have to see what's going to happen because this is not what I was expecting. So
And
that
of
that was
course, as the writer, I love to hear that you want to keep turning pages.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. I also want to say that so a key component we talked about is conflict, and you do a great job in showing Eliza having a conflict with pretty much everybody. Not necessarily, getting into fights, but just something, butting heads with her brother, or as you said, with the sister-in-law, and all, like even there's a slight conflict with her best friend, and also like you even have conflicts with her dead mother and the memory of her father who just passed away. So while you were plotting out the story, so you have Eliza and all the characters in her world. Did you have an idea what each subplot was going to be about, and also how they would play out, or was it kind of like, oh, I don't like how this is going. I have to, let me backtrack to, when they meet, right after the Shiva, or like right after, the encounter with the stepmom type of thing. Was it a lot of even though you don't really outline ahead that much, was it kind of like, okay, this is what has to happen with the brother, this is what has to happen with the best friend, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that some of it was, I mean, certainly the stepmother was a conflict that I had planned out,
Hmm.
but other things evolved. I think I knew going in that she and her brother had sort of established roles in the family,
Hmm.
at least in Eliza's head, he was the golden child and she was the screw up.
Sure.
And she continued to see it that way, even though at this stage of her life, she is quite a capable young woman. Um, but as I was so I knew that there was going to be those roles, but how that played out in their relationship with each other, I hadn't really thought through until I got onto the page and started to
Oh,
realize how that was going to impact their day-to-day interactions. And especially since you pointed out this was a very much Eliza-driven story, which is true, but of course the other characters have their own reactions
right.
to
They're the
what's
main
going
character
on.
in their story.
Yes, they're the main character in their own story. Yes, exactly. So I that evolved
Hmm.
in the telling, in how her brother Scott was handling what was going on between them, and his level of engagement or not engagement or frustration or
Hmm.
um,
Did you ever have to go back and kind of like, rejigger something like, oh, I don't like how this, sort of subplot is playing out. I have to like retrace my steps and like, think of something else that might be a little more effective, but also kind of as we said, it's like everyone's slightly interconnected.
yes,
So did you ever have to kind of like, okay, the connection here isn't strong enough. I need to have something that connects these two characters who are not directly connected, but to strengthen the kind of connection between them.
yes, I definitely had to do that. And I found, for example, one of the um, issues that comes into greater and greater focus as the book goes on is Eliza's view of her mother as perfect and her needing to come to, having lost her when she was 16, they had never gotten to the point of the daughter and mother at loggerheads. And
Hmm.
um, her having to come to see her mother as a fully fleshed person who's not perfect and recognize that that maybe she does need to allow herself to feel some anger
Hmm.
about how her mother handled things. And as I wrote and realized that that was an issue I was going to have to deal with, that was an area where I went back to lay some other seeds or adjust some conversations. So she, so it didn't suddenly become on page, 280, she has this, epiphany. They
Right.
just saw, I don't know how to say that, deus ex machina, like, oh, I've suddenly had this realization. The seeds needed to be planted all
Hmm.
along.
Sure. Actually, that big raises a great point that one detail I found was very interesting is there are minimal amount of scenes involving Eliza and her mother. Like not even, it's kind of like her remembering things, but we don't really get specifics.
Yeah.
That there's a few more with her father, but also, she was with him longer. That was that deliberate, or did you feel it was better to kind of just keep things strictly or primarily from Eliza's point of view, just kind of like not like here's I remember went out and got my first bra, that type of thing, and there's no scene like that, but it's just that there's really no if Eliza has a flashback involving her mother, there's really pretty much nothing like that in the book as far as I can recall.
Yeah, that's true. There isn't. And I think so much of Eliza's um, current view. I mean, her mom's been gone for 10 years, and
Hmm.
the memories, I think, were very colored by the 2 years that her mother was dying.
Mm.
And that has been much more of what has stuck with her. So some of the flashbacks that you get, which are really more about her and her brother's friend, who, he drove her home from school and she'd sit in his car and they would talk about music, and it would be sort of the break that she would get before she
Hmm.
went into the house and saw her sick mom. Um, that stuff is easier for her to focus on
Yeah.
than the fresher memories of her mom being ill. And then the other stuff was she was young. It's hard to remember those details.
And it's also different, especially from that, between 16 and 26, to your teen years to your adult years, things drastically change for everybody. So, and of course,
Yes.
you're going to look back. You might look back with slightly rose-colored glasses, like you just remember the good times. You don't remember the really
Yes.
lousy times.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Um, while we're speaking about characters, I've often found that in all types of writing, in one form or another, that a lot of the characters are some kind of reflection of the writer's personality, like, the brother, that's just like me when I'm very serious about things, or the best friend when I'm feeling very silly, that type of thing. Is not just about Eliza's similarities to you, but were did you see that in a lot of the characters? And I guess also people who know you, especially maybe your husband, when they were reading this, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, that sounds, this character sounds just like you."
That's interesting. I don't think anyone said that to me, but thinking about it in the way you framed it, um, I find birth order fascinating.
Okay.
I myself am an only child, which resembles, according to the research, the firstborn. So I
Mm.
would align more with Eliza's older brother. And I think in many ways, I'm a lot more like him. I'm the problem solver. I'm the one
Ah.
that will come in and help people, or, okay, what can I do to make this better? Which is the role that he always took with Eliza. Um, so in that sense, I can see myself in him, although in some of the more specific grief things, like Eliza not being able to eat because she's sad, that's
Hmm.
me. I'm a grief stress non-eater. Um, so I can see, and I would say my sense of humor is probably Mo's sense of humor, her friend's sense of humor.
Yeah, see, I can relate to that because I'm the youngest of five. So even when I was, out of college and on living on the other side of the country, and we'd go home for family events, meet friends of my parents, and my mom would say, "And this is the baby." He lives in California. It's like, oh, never going to get away from it. Okay, so we have been talking to Andrea J. Stein about her book, Dear Eliza. So this one of the things I want to ask you is that what advice would you have for writers who are telling this kind of it's a very personal story. It's not directly about you, but there's a lot of reflections about your experiences and the emotions that you went through, especially after losing your mother. What would you suggest or advice you have for writers who want to tell like this kind of personal story or to put their spin on their own personal story?
I think I would say that you not to be afraid of getting deep into how you feel and not shying away from things that might be painful. And also, at the same time, not feeling like you have to be 100% truthful
Hmm.
because you're creating a story for others. So infuse it with your own feelings, but the story, if you're writing for others and not just to tell your children, this is what I went through, you have to make the story and what works for the story paramount.
Hmm. Okay, that's great. Again, we've been talking to Andrea J. Stein. Her book is Dear Eliza. Andrea, this has been a great discussion. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. I have loved your questions, and it's really given me a lot to think about.
Oh, great. So you had your first book, Typecast, and now Dear Eliza. So the big question is, so what's up next?
I'm working on my next book, which is similar, same genre, women's fiction. And it is in the same, I'm calling it in my own head, the AJS, Andrea J. Stein universe, like the MCU.
Sure.
There is a cameo at the end of Dear Eliza from the main character in Typecast. And
Ah,
now my
okay.
new book is about a young woman named Jules. And as I thought about Jules and what her story is, I realized that she is the older sister of the admin at the nonprofit where Eliza works. Don't ask me why that's the case. I mean,
Okay.
Amber is not a major character
No.
in Dear Eliza, but she pops up again in my next book, and it's sort of a whole little universe.
I was going to ask. I wasn't sure if you were going to say, actually, no, it's the continuing adventures of Eliza. So I'm like, so what happens next? But I guess you just want to leave that up to the reader that they could fill in the blanks
I
themselves.
guess so. I mean, I'm about halfway through the first draft. So we may see Eliza again. I also at one point started a sequel to my first book, to Typecast, which who knows, maybe I'll get back to someday.
Okay, no problem. So Andrea, where can people find out more about you? I mean, your website and what social media they can find you on?
Absolutely. So my website is andreajstein.com, andreajsteinbook.com. And you can find information about the books there, links to buy, links to all my social media, reviews. I post practically every day on Instagram. I started off as a what they call a bookstagrammer, just posting about other books.
Okay.
And now I intersperse it with some content about my books, and that's books.turning.brains underscore AJ Stein. But it's a great place if you're looking for reviews of other books too. Follow me there for tips. I read a lot of women's fiction, suspense, and then bits of other things.
Okay,
So.
I also have to ask, so you are also big on other authors. If someone has a book or a manuscript, they think, "Hey, you might be interested in this. Are you open to queries?" I think is the big question.
I am open to queries, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Because every writer wants to know that. Because it's always the
Yes.
first question, how do I get an agent? No matter what kind of writer you are, how do I get somebody to help me out? All right, so we
Yes.
have been talking to Andrea J. Stein and her book, Dear Eliza, a novel. Thank you again for being here. And viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed the show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Also, this is the second to last week of the crowdfunding for my short film project, Shecky. We are this close to hitting our stretch goal. We only have a couple $100 to go. We hit our initial goal, so everything that we get from here on in is going towards finishing up with post-production and any film festival fees that might come up. So fingers crossed, please open up those wallets. Yes, I actually said that. It gets on Indiegogo, Shecky post-production. It's the only one there. So feel free to take a look. We've got fantastic tier rewards. You definitely get the best bang for your buck out of investing in this short film project. For my social media, you can check out my screenwriting blog. It is maximumz.blog. On Twitter, I'm at maximum_Z. And for Blue Sky and Instagram, it's at Pez Screenwriting, just like the candy. And this show has its own accounts as well at Podcast CWL on Twitter and on Blue Sky. You also check out my Go Ahead and Ask books. They're on Amazon. Those are the ones about screenwriting and pie, 3 whole volumes. Like I said, that's Andrea. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.